Good afternoon or good morning. I believe that many of you have signed up from the US, so good morning to you. And welcome to today's session, which is a new era of risk reduction, how to maintain productivity while enhancing safety protection. So first off, I would like to welcome our guest speakers. I'll start with you, Hugh Maxwell, Managing Director of Maxwell Safety Limited. Welcome, Hugh. I'd also like to welcome Andy Rainforth, who is the Group Chief Commercial Officer at ASafe. Welcome. And Ben Allen, Head of Product at ASafe. Welcome. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here and looking forward to the conversation ahead. My name is James Young. I'm from PR agency ECPR, and I'll be moderating the session. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should have a more button. Feel free, if you click on that there, feel free to add questions for the panelists, and we will answer those questions towards the end of the session. Also, I think you can enable captions in a language of your choice in the same menu. So before we start, should we get our first poll together, perhaps? So you should have a poll pop up on your screen now, which will be, what's the biggest time waster in your daily operations? And your options there should be machine breakdown or maintenance issues, safety incidents that trigger investigations or stoppages, inefficient operations, or an option to tell us in the chat something in addition. So we'll just give you 30, 40 seconds just to answer that, and then we'll share the results on screen, just in case you haven't seen it. And for those that are just joining the session, we've just opened a poll. You should have a pop-up on your screen, our first of two, where we're trying to get to the bottom of what the biggest time waster in your daily operations is. Okay, should we have a look at those results? Okay, interesting. So inefficient operations there with a clear lead, which will definitely help steer this conversation. And those maintenance issues still there, still prevalent. And those others there, we'll definitely have a look at those towards the end of the conversation as well. I think somebody's added an other. Okay, so with that in mind, let's jump in. So let's start with why risk management needs a rethink across businesses. Hugh, maybe I can start with you. Can I ask you why risk management is still seen as a tick box exercise, and why many industry businesses, in industry businesses, what is the danger in that?
Thanks, James. Well, having worked in a range of industries, some quite significantly high risk, I think one of the drawbacks why it's seen as a tick box exercise is because in reality, many businesses still think and treat risk management as a compliance-driven issue rather than thinking something they can use to drive performance to higher levels. And it's this tick box mindset which is really dangerous. So it leads to much more reactive safety. Waiting until something goes wrong is far more costly than planning and preparing it right in the long run. You see, so when safety is prioritized in this way, and something goes wrong, you're creating a lot of disruption, a lot of unplanned shutdowns, investigations, reputational damage, and a lot of costs incurred needlessly. And I think one of the problems sometimes is that there's either a disconnect or a misalignment with the boardroom and the front line. Workers done does not always align with workers imagined. And it's this gap that causes a lot of misinformation to either be conceived or perceived. Whereas if they're taking a risk-based approach, rather than just seeing it in terms of legal compliance or exposure, getting the right people involved at the right levels to identify not just what the daily operational hazards are, but the overall risk to the business, then we can bridge that gap with good systems and good leadership that allows us to really live and control and mitigate the risk in action, rather than not just have a tick box exercise where we put the paperwork in place to say, oh, that's our risk profile here. We'll get it out next year before we do our annual report again. So that's, in my experience, that's one of the drawbacks, really.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds perfect. Great answer. I mean, thank you for kicking off the conversation. Ben, if I can come to you, does what Hugh is saying resonate? I mean, is this what you're hearing from customers?
Absolutely. Typically, our first point of call, our first conversations with customers will be when they're being reactive to a challenge in their facility, whether it's a downtime issue in the facility with operational inefficiencies, or it's a physical issue with people. So where we often see the pain points come from three core elements. is from people, always the biggest challenge that we see, vehicles within a facility, and the infrastructure, and the blend of those three within 24/7 hour operational environments is where the risks stem and evolve from. So our common conversations are around the customers will have done their typical 5x5 scoring index of risk versus severity, and how all of that will work together. The customers will understand they have a problem, and then they come to us to help solve those problems. Look at solutions that will offer long-term value to them.
Yeah. Andy, can I bring you in here? Is it fair to say what Ben is saying is pretty common for many businesses? I mean, when businesses first come to ASafe, what normally prompts that conversation? Are they planning ahead, or has there been an incident, or something already happened?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, a lot of what Ben has said obviously resonates with me. I think historically, a lot of our first conversations have started reactively. Clients have had a near miss, an incident, an accident, perhaps a regulator's visit even that triggers urgency. Something's already gone wrong. But that is shifting. We have more businesses now approaching us proactively. They're planning a new facility, rolling out a broader safety initiative, or they simply don't want to wait for something to go wrong before they take action. I think safety isn't being viewed as that tick box solely anymore. It's becoming a strategic investment in uptime, resilience, in operational continuity. And clients want modern engineered systems, not improvised workarounds. We're also seeing a growing trend where businesses are asking, does safety really need to be the enemy of operational efficiency? Do those two things have to be mutually exclusive, or can they work hand in hand? Better still, can they actually become synergistic?
So are they two sides of the same coin?
Depends what system you put it in, James, but yes, I believe they can be.
Ben, could you tell me what the shift to intelligent risk management looks like for customers? What are you hearing? How do they begin building a more strategic approach to their risk management?
Yeah, so Hugh touched on this earlier. It's very much historically business have worked operationally led. Their KPIs, their measures, they're all based on output. What we're starting to see now is by getting involved and changing that process. So whether it's a safety barrier, whether it's changing the way operations are actually being conducted, what vehicle movements look like through a facility. So we've worked with a food and beverage company who actually rerouted their entire traffic and pedestrian routes to completely eliminate any clashes. And what they saw was a massive increase in their operational output from that. They were eliminating risk of people and then allowing that operation to continue to be carried out uninterrupted.
Interesting.
Once they start to see that element, they then rolled that out into multiple other operational aspects as well. So not everything is always the same within a facility. Different operations, different vehicles, everything operates differently. By understanding those, they can then proactively look at what those challenges are and look at solutions.
Thank you. So, Andy, if I come back to you briefly, how does the science and technology in smart safety support the shifts we're talking about?
I think the science and the technology are two separate but contributory things. So let me break that down a little bit. I think it's a combination of advanced engineered materials and then the data-driven intelligence. So on the materials side, not all polymer barriers are created equal. They may look like it, but our barriers are not just plastic tubes. We've spent decades creating and honing advanced materials through a combination of chemical engineering and molecular science. They're engineered to flex, absorb, and recover again and again. Now that means less downtime, fewer replacements, and consistent performance in a variety of harsh conditions. And then separately on the technology side, our industrial IoT devices, whether they're standalone or embedded within the products, are able to gather a range of data from across the workplace. We then surface that in a persona-specific dashboard using push notifications in a client-specific cadence. Let me put that more simply. We give the right information to the right people at the right time. And that turns safety from being passive protection into an active source of operational intelligence, which then in turn allows them to drive efficiencies.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. So, Hugh, Andy's just sort of outlined the different technological aspects of modern safety, but in your mind, what other must-haves when a business wants to move from a reactive to a more proactive risk management?
Well, I think first and foremost, there's got to be the willingness, there's got to be the leadership, the buy-in from the top to begin with,
Buy-in,
recognizing the need to change and to really be the catalyst, the driver of change. I think a lot of what both Andy and Ben have shared are truly valuable and really relevant, especially in this age of technology and AI type solutions fit in with those physical, well-engineered solutions that the likes of ASafe actually provide in the field, where you really are looking to align more with workers done and workers imagined together. Because ultimately that's what we want. We want to make it the safe place. We don't want risk assessment just for the sake of them. We want people to identify and live the actual risk mitigation if they can. So for me, the really supporting that, there's visibility. You can't manage what you can't see. So making use of this smart tech like sensors, IoTs and analytics can help us to actually uncover any silent risks before they actually escalate and give us these unwanted events and incidents that seem to still be happening regularly. Yeah, very much so. And integration. The risk systems, as the guys were just saying, they should be integrated into the whole of the business across all departments, not in silos. For far too long, I think safety has been seen as a bolt-on silo, sometimes treated separately, but we need to integrate that as much as possible in day-to-day operations, whether it's operations, maintenance, we should always speak in the same language. And this leadership commitment's got to cascade through every part of the business at every level. And without this leadership, this modelling of an improved safe behaviour and prioritising risk both at strategic and operation level just won't align. It's important that we try and get this instilled. So it's really about weaving a greater focus on risk awareness in terms of actually how the business operates on a day-to-day basis, not just waiting for reporting or reacting, but trying to build it in, like the guys said, with the right physical solutions as well as the right technological solutions to take the business forward.
Really good stuff, Hugh. Really interesting. So, I'll just take a minute and just say, if you do have questions so far for the panelists, we'll answer them at the end. Please do pop them in the more section at the bottom of the window there, and we will get to those towards the end of the session. So yeah, moving on, Ben, this is one for you. So now that we've defined what modern intelligent safety looks like, I mean, let's discuss how it impacts the operational performance. So, what were the results that customers witnessed once a new system was in place?
Yeah, so we've got case study material working with a logistics company where we utilised our edge devices and we could measure the number of impacts that were occurring within a facility. So we ran a trial period of 60 days. From there, we've got the data that supports the information that it's not just that top level that people see of repairing a barrier, replacing a barrier. It's, yes, that work needs to be done, and you're taking maintenance teams out who should be looking after your machines, keeping your operations running. They're being asked to replace barrier pin, whether it's steel barrier, replace steel barrier, repair concrete floor damage. All whilst you're doing this, you've just removed a section of your operational space. You've had to close that area of the facility down to make it safe. By using cutting-edge advanced safety barrier solutions, edge devices, this is where the payback comes from. So with the trial period, we could clearly evidence to that client that their break-even point was after 18 months of implementing what they perceived from the procurement team as an expensive solution. In reality, it's not. The payback comes by doing the right thing at the right time, at the first point, interacting with the right people, fundamentally solving the problem that they had as well.
Interesting. Just to build upon that, are there any surprises reported?
So the biggest surprise we had from a client was they implemented Rakai, one of our edge devices, and their feedback was that it completely changed their drivers' behaviour. I think Hugh mentioned this earlier. People expect when edge devices, IoTs brought into facilities, big brother's watching. what this client found was that their drivers actually reported incidents immediately, and it changed their entire culture. They were more open. That customer worked with those drivers. They were not going to lengths of rewarding them, but they were acknowledging that, yes, you've made a mistake, that's fine, thank you for letting us know. They were then eliminating that real high level of risk of rack collapses.
Yeah, that behavioral change has come back several times now. Andy, from your conversations with customers, how do their expectations around safety performance match the actual reality once a system's in place? Are there areas where they are surprised as well, or otherwise?
Yeah, most customers come to us expecting fewer accidents and less damage, right? And yes, we absolutely deliver on that. But what surprises them, and I'm going to echo something Ben's just said, it isn't just the reduction in incidents, it's everything else that follows. So the operators do quickly change their behaviour. You often see a drop in suboptimal driving habits as drivers self-correct. You see an increase of self-reporting of accidents, which means any problems are identified and dealt with much quicker. And just having the visible engineered systems in place, combined with that impact monitoring, drives immediate accountability without a single policy change. I think the bigger surprise for many clients, though, is how impactful the data becomes. So the operational teams or the operations teams start identifying traffic flow bottlenecks, they spot repeat impact zones or hotspots, and being able to adjust floor layouts based on actual evidence and not just guesswork or intuition. And then at leadership level, those insights suddenly make the case for investment clearer. It's objective, it's trackable, it speaks the language of performance. So while safety starts as a protection measure, it quickly becomes a tool for continuous improvement. And that shift from cost center to performance driver is what really changes the game.
So it's those informed decisions that can be made based off that aggregated data. Interesting. Yeah, thank you, Andy. Hugh, so Andy's spoken about what businesses should expect from intelligent safety. From your personal perspective, what should they take responsibility for? What does it mean to lead with safety and not just manage it?
Well, I think the fact that we've shared the fact that these tools are enablers rather than restrictors in itself speaks volumes in terms of how it just helped this paradigm shift in terms of culture. And it's not as if it's being enforced on people, it's being adopted by the people at the time in their own, what I call their own habitat, their own safe zone as such. So that's probably one of the most powerful ways you can actually change in terms of allowing people to lead safety for themselves. And this is where I think safety leadership really matters. It's giving the people these enablers the right tools, the right environment, so that they can feel psychologically safe to speak up when things are wrong and to use these systems to work for them and not see them as really restrictors for them to do the job. So I think managing the systems in this way is a big part of this, but you also need this leadership ownership, that the leadership bites the bullet and takes the actual gamble of putting these new systems in. Whilst changes are constant, a lot of people, as you said, earlier, I think Ben was mentioning about people see it as a cost without a real true payback. I think these things are sometimes they're intangibles in terms of what they can actually benefit, not just the cost side of things, but the actual culture going forward. But I think it's important the leaders set the tone. We're not just looking at KPIs, we're looking at making marketable, distinct changes in the business. I've always been a big believer in to try and put some of these changes in probably where you see your biggest problem areas in a plant or in a facility. Use that as your benchmark. If that works there, then why not extend it elsewhere? Because nothing breeds success like success. And where you're actually reinforcing and letting people change their own safe behaviours like this, that's a form of leadership. And it shows that people are actually embedding safety as a core value. It's not something just measure afterwards, it's something they're actually modifying their approach and actually engaging into their work. So I think it's a really powerful driver that you're offering in A-Safe, not just in terms of setting, again, the physical solution, but actually the ongoing impact it has on people's behaviours and mindset.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you. Andy, Ben, if I can maybe pose a question to you both, see who wants to pick it up. From your experience, discussing the real benefits of having a safety first policy baked into how a company operates. I know we kind of touched on this already, but is this, what's your opinion on that?
Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I will. So, with regards to doing safety first, it's where we often see benefits is, and when I've been out with installation teams, is we get the shop floor, the people who are operating in the day to day, come and ask what's happening, what we're doing, why we're changing out steel. We have the conversations about polymer and plastic, and that can't be strong. But they start to get a feeling that they are actually being looked after. The business does care about their well-being. They'll go and look at the videos of forklift trucks. We've all seen it, the big bump into the barrier and it flexes and moves. They start to buy in then, and they start to get more trust in the company. And then what we've seen is they will then start to work with whether it's the quality teams, the health and safety, operational teams, they'll actually start to have more of a voice in the business and look at whether it's engineering changes into other processes. They start to believe that the business wants to change and adopt new things, not just in our safety barriers, but they want to listen to those people as well.
Thank you, Ben. Andy, have you anything you'd like to add to that?
And I'll address it from a polar opposite, right? Just to add some context. I was with a client a couple of months ago in the US who was responsible for leading they're in health and beauty. So manufacturing razor thin margins in that B2C environment, and very similar to their competitors in product set and differentiation. So I'm not going to describe it as perfect competition, but it was put to me that their cost leadership position versus their competitors, they felt as though they'd squeezed every nickel and dime out of that from a manufacturing perspective. They were looking at how safety could give them that leap in cost leadership, in efficiency. So they actually, we talk about safety first, they weren't in the slightest interest in safety first for the sake of it. They were interested in promoting smart safety products as a driver purely for efficiency. So they got world-class safety for free, almost as an initiative to drive cost leadership. So I don't really think there is one right way for an organization to look at it, whether it is angled at safety and embedding the culture into the business and the mindsets, all of which super valuable. But even if that isn't the key driver, I think there are enough reasons across the board that it doesn't have to be a mutually exclusive thing. So they were looking at it from how they could get steal a march on their competitors from a cost down perspective.
Thank you, Andy, and Ben for your answer as well. Andy, I'm going to stay with you. We've spoken about the costs and the ROI of intelligent safety. So, and we've also spoken about the investment involved. So, that investment can be a sticky subject when you're trying to get the buy-in from the leadership. So, is there a specific approach that operations and safety managers should take to ensure that the conversation stays centered on value and not just cost?
Yes, I think so. I think the key is to evolve that conversation from being cost to value, and safety itself isn't just about the compliance. Take safety as a standalone issue. It's about protecting uptime, reducing damage, making operations more resilient. None of that has changed, and I don't think as an industry or a sector we do enough to give our clients' operational teams and EHS teams the tools to present those arguments upstream into leadership. Because actually, I think as standalone issues, they stack up from an ROI and a total cost of ownership perspective. I think what has changed is that intelligent safety systems will do so much more than that. So what often resonates with budget holders at leadership level isn't the safety hardware itself, it's the efficiency improvement that comes with it and the positive return from the investment that they'll see as an ultimate result. The technology elements elevate that broader safety offering, and that entire ecosystem leads to higher uptime, less maintenance, fewer repairs, lower insurance premiums, and even a stronger ESG positioning and a talent acquisition and attractiveness position. Ultimately, leaders want clarity, resilience, and predictability. And the intelligent safety supports all three. And I'll echo something Hugh said earlier. It shifts the thinking from safety being a cost center to it being a strategic enabler. And that's the appropriate framing when we're talking to the C-suite.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for that answer. So, Hugh, actually, I'll take the conversation back to you now. So, Andy's made a strong case here for why safety should be seen as an investment in productivity and not just protection. But value only matters when the leadership actually listens. So, Hugh, from your perspective, how do you get that message across and
Well, I think,
and make something that drives decisions and not just reports?
Well, I think the important thing is that we look holistically out there and see what the real world consequences are, both of buying into this, but also of getting it wrong as well. I think we've really got to shift away from this compliance language, because that's not going to move the needle. And the more we can do it as a value add, the more we can build it in as part of our ongoing strategy. It's going to basically show us that safety is a value, but it's also important that the people reckon and see it for the value it is at all levels. I mean, a lot of leaders still don't appreciate the fact that any unplanned stoppage, any unavoidable incident, it's not just a safety issue, it's production delays, it's a missed order, it's unhappy customers. These are the things we can't afford to lose these days. So I think if we can present safety as a value add, as a boardroom thing that actually is part of every meeting, every issue, it's not seen as a stability enabler and growth enabler for continuous improvement rather than a restriction. I think it comes back to the old adage, doesn't it? Good safety is good business, and how well we can promote that throughout the whole organisation, and even interacting with other stakeholders, our suppliers as well as our actual customers and regulatory bodies. It shows that it really is adding some value and it really is raising the profile. And I think since the COVID days, people are much more risk aware now. So you're going to get more buy-in when you can see that the company's taking it serious. That's being conveyed to the customer. I think our own workers themselves will want to get involved and want to give their bit as well.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, thank you. Before we move to Q&A, if we do have questions, please do pop them in the more section below. There's a tab there, and I think there's Q&A in there. I do have time for one more question. So what we'll do is we'll go around the room here. Andy, I'll start with you. So if a business wants to reduce risk without reducing productivity, what's the one shift they need to make first? Andy, do you want to kick this one off?
Mindset.
Right.
Moving away from that idea that safety slows you down and towards the understanding that intelligent safety actually helps you move faster and with more control. Efficiency and safety are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the safest operations are often the most efficient because they eliminate uncertainty, disruption, and unpredictable cost. Then when you layer technology-enabled safety in, you've got systems that capture real-time data and transform that data into actionable intelligence. Then you turn safety into a performance tool. It's not just about protection anymore. It's about precision, insight, and the confidence to push forward without exposing the business to unnecessary risk.
Thank you, Andy. Hugh, I'm intrigued on an answer from yourself.
Well, I think totally reinforcing what Andy's just said and building on what Ben said as well, I think it's right. Let's see this as an enabler. Let's build safety into strategy in the overall business planning, not just operations and not just reactive when something goes wrong. And then we can build this safety in the plan of how we growth, how we develop, how we invest in new systems or launch new products and services. This means we've got this prevention mindset and this continuous improvement mindset as we grow. And I think that's a real game changer. These are the businesses that are going to be at the forefront in future. These are the ones that are going to embrace that new technology and the new solutions and actually be the market leader. Obviously, big knock-on effects with people retention, with keeping the process further ahead of competitors. So, I mean, from a sustainability perspective, a lot of big advantages if we can actually build it into the strategic level to begin with.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you. Ben, have you got something you'd like to add?
Yeah, from an implementation perspective, is really define what that problem is. It's the old Einstein phrase, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes defining that problem. Is rather than just replacing a metal barrier for a polymer barrier, is really dig deep into that process. Do you actually need to have a barrier there at all? By putting a barrier in there, are you actually increasing risk? Are you reducing operational space for people? To really dig deep and define what the problem is you're trying to solve. before just replicating and that definition of insanity of doing the same thing over and over again.
Thank you, Ben. So that was my final question. Before we go to Q&A, I do believe we have a second poll that we'd like to pop up, and this is probably the ideal moment as well to add any more questions to the Q&A section. So I'll leave that poll up there. So yeah, let's jump into Q&A. Okay, we have one question here. How do you build a safety culture that actually lasts? Should we go around the room? Maybe Hugh, do you want to start that one off?
Certainly, my friend. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's got to start with this commitment from the top. It's got to start with consistency and visibility. If you want a lasting culture in any business, it's got to be one where people just don't follow the rules. They've got to truly believe in the value of the rules and believe that it's adding value and protecting them. So if you can build that recognition in, this is where your safe behaviours, sharing your lessons learned from accidents, and this is the way you have your leadership at every level of the business, which shows a daily commitment consistently, but it also allows people to have their voice. So when people feel heard, feel supported and feel engaged, that's when you're going to get ownership of safety, and that's when you're basically going to build a safety culture that not only lasts, but actually evolves and continues to thrive and becomes more powerful in terms of value add back to the business.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Hugh. Ben, maybe you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, get the people involved in the process, because they're the people you're asking to adopt it. So the earlier you can bring them in, get them involved, feel part of that process, the much easier it is for adoption.
Good stuff. So by way of a champion, is a champion the way forward within a business?
Whether it's champions, I'd just be more general than that.
Yeah.
It's the actual people who you're asking to do that process or that job.
The ownership. Andy, is there anything from your perspective on that?
I think there's a clue in the question, and I'm really pleased the way the question was phrased, to build a safety culture, because I think that is the way to do it. I don't think you can create one, instill one, force one. It is a build. I'm only going to repeat what Ben and Hugh have said, but it is around constant communication. And I think for me, it's not putting the onus on environmental health and safety leaders, managers, executives saying you're responsible for going out and promoting this. I think we've talked for quite some length about the additional advantages that safety brings to every function. So I think for the leaders of those functions, whether they be operational, fiscal, IT, whatever they may be, there are advantages to instilling safety throughout the organisation on that function. So I think for each function to recognise the advantages that brings, to be constantly communicating that downstream, but again, just repeating what the other guys have already said, and getting that bottom-up build, and having everybody in the organisation has got an equal voice. There shouldn't be an organisational hierarchy when it comes to safety concerns, safety improvements. So I think giving everybody time in the room and a voice to be heard is key. And alongside the continuous communication, it can't be done as a one hit.
Thank you, Andy. Ben, I've got one question for you. What advice can you give to those in the same position as the customers that you've mentioned today, who are obviously looking to implement safety changes themselves?
I'm actually going to pinch something Hugh mentioned earlier, really, is look at the priorities and go and find your highest risk. So whether that's between people and machines and infrastructure, so whether that's potentially eliminating the downtime of your key operating machinery, is go and identify that risk and get that change embedded first. That will help from an operational perspective. Obviously, that will help with your C-suite level, getting procurement and funding budgets, but also from your KPI, measurables, deliverables element. You can keep your operations facility running.
Thank you, Ben. Andy, one for you. How soon do companies typically see results after deploying intelligent safety systems?
I think it depends on the results you're expected to see, right? So you're getting instant results in terms of the physical product is there. So that drives the behaviours we've spoken about before in terms of the self-reporting and those types of things. I think then if I look at results in terms of operational improvements, it depends how busy the facility is and how much data you're gathering and how much you can turn that into actionable intelligence. So usually pretty quickly. We've had quite an unusual experience with a client recently that has committed to rolling out a program of our edge devices, and we were able to help them relay out a floor plan for a new facility before they'd even put any bolts in the ground. So just based on running that floor plan that was proposed through our engine, we could see that other clients had had similar challenges with similar floor plans. We could identify hotspots before they'd even put a fork truck in there. So we were delivering results before they'd actually put the first intelligent device in, which is unusual but not extreme, I guess. If the question is around fiscal ROI, I think Ben mentioned earlier, our traditional product suite, you see an ROI within 12 or 18 months through reduction in maintenance costs and replacements against capital expense. But if we're talking about intelligent safety systems, actually the capital expense is very limited indeed, because we provision them generally as a subscription onto the data set. So it shifts the expenditure from being capital expenditure to operational expenditure. So budget holders tend to be different, and actually you'll tend to find that the intelligence you gather, the real life things you can do with that data, will far outstrip the saving or the cost efficiency from that will far outstrip the operational expense on a monthly basis. So essentially, James, as outlandish as this claim may be, almost immediately.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Just looking down the questions here. Okay, maybe we can go around the room with this one. So we were talking about building a safety culture, and somebody's asked here, how does the influx of agency workers during peak periods affect this, and how can you overcome it? Ben, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, common challenge. We're starting to come to peak for the summer season. From my perspective, this is where we can see tools like PAS13 work. So creating defined traffic routes, defined pedestrian routes, using signage, and guiding people through a facility. Basically, don't let them guess. Guide them through the facility, eliminate your hotspots. And then I'm sure Hugh will touch on this. There's a training and awareness that still has to be done.
And Hugh, is there anything you'd like to bolt on to that?
I'm totally agreeing with what Ben said, particularly if nothing else, this is one of the enablers. And we know that there's high turnover and more different challenges with aging workforce, different age profiles, and different generations come to work. And I think the more we can put this common ground or this common modus operandi within the business, or people coming into the business as well as experienced people, this is what makes us and helps us transition and get them to buy into that culture earlier.
Thank you, Hugh. Andy, do you have an opinion on that topic?
Yeah, I think that if you're designing your safety systems and building your safety culture around the times of the year that your organisation is the busiest, then the influx of agency workers shouldn't be a challenge because you've built to that scale in the first place. Now, that's a utopian view, right? So let's go back to reality and say there are more bodies in the building than normal. Then it is all the things that the other guys have already mentioned. And it's about ensuring the control, that pedestrian areas are very clearly marked, they're very clearly trained. Generally, the agency workers, not always, but are not normally driving the powered industrial trucks. They're normally on the manual picking packing side. So as long as there is good segregation between pedestrian and vehicles and the rules and regulations are in place, really the quantity of bodies moving through the workplace shouldn't necessarily increase the risk.
Thank you, Andy. I think that is all for our Q&A at the moment. Okay, so I would just like to say thank you very much for all of you that have attended today. Thank you for sitting in on this session. And I'd also like to thank our panelists and our spokespeople today. Hugh, thank you very much for being part of this today. Thank you. Much appreciated. Andy, Ben, much appreciated. All the best, everybody.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and great to meet you guys. I've met some good people from ASAFE. It's great to see them all walking the talk in the same direction. So I look forward to seeing what you've got to come up with in future and being part of it, hopefully. Take care.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you all.
Thank you.